The atmosphere was heavy with tension as Robert De Niro arrived on the MSNBC stage, his black suit tailored to perfection, eyes with that same icy resolve he applied to every Godfather shoot. Seated opposite him was Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, the 43-year-old Texas star on the rise, her purple blazer vibrant against the studio lights. What had begun as a casual political debate was on the verge of the year's most explosive TV moment. De Niro leaned in, jabbing his finger in the face of the young Congresswoman, his voice lowering to that ominous whisper that had sent shivers through generations of audience. "You don't know what you're talking about, sweetheart," he grumbled, adopting the same tone that made Travis Bickle a legend. "Sit down and let the grown-ups deal with this." But what occurred in the next 30 seconds would leave De Niro agog, set social media completely wild, and show the world that this Harvard-trained lawyer from Dallas was not going to be bullied by anyone, not even a Hollywood icon. Before we get into this amazing tale, press that like button if you're prepared to watch what happens when Texas fire clashes with Hollywood arrogance. And don't forget to subscribe, because you'll want to be here for what happens next. The studio lights dimmed as Crockett carefully took off her glasses, placed them on the table, and stared Darrow straight in the face. The whole country was on the verge of seeing something historic. To grasp the reason why this showdown was so incendiary, you have to know who these two titans actually are, and how important this moment was to America. At 81 years of age, Robert De Niro wasn't merely an actor. He was an institution with 2 Oscars on his mantle and a career that spanned more than 5 decades. He'd constructed an empire consisting of the renowned new restaurant chains and hundreds of millions in partnership deals. From being Vito Corleone in The Godfather Part 2 to his iconic Travis Bickle role in Taxi Driver, De Niro had demanded respect and fear in equal proportion. But these last few years, he'd been something else. Arguably one of the most outspoken critics of America's conservative politics. He'd stood outside choruses, given fiery speeches, and used every platform available to voice his opposition. His deep voice and intimidating presence had silenced many opponents before they could even begin to challenge him. Tonight he'd come to MSNBC expecting another easy victory against what he saw as just another young politician. Jasmine Crockett was everything De Niro wasn't expecting. The 43-year-old Texas Congresswoman had graduated from Harvard with a law degree and established herself as one of the brightest legal minds in Congress. Raised in St. Louis and born there, she now called Texas home. She'd gone from public defender to state representative to the corridors of Congress through sheer willpower and masterful legal tactics. What made Crockett such a threat wasn't just the schooling. It was her capacity to think 3 steps ahead of her rivals without ever losing her composure. She'd been making headlines for her verbal sparring skills during congressional hearings, her capacity to disassemble elaborate arguments within seconds, and her unflinching style of going up against anyone who dared to try intimidating her. She'd gone toe-to-toe with veteran politicians, influential lobbyists, and media personalities without ever wavering. This wasn't another political chit-chat show appearance. This was respecting someone's power and who actually did have the right to speak for America. De Niro was the old guard, rich, established, accustomed to getting his way through reputation intimidation. Crockett was the new breed of leaders, educated, ready, and totally not intimidated by anyone's star status. The issue that united them was volatile enough by itself: federal support for social programs, and who truly knew what Americans who worked needed. De Niro had spent the early segments of the show discussing his philanthropic effort and his knowledge of true America, his film work. Crockett had listened intently, taking notes, readying himself for what would become a master class in Tyson to political warfare. While cameras rolled and millions of Americans watched, neither the host nor the audience could possibly have anticipated that they were about to see the end of one legend's intimidating strategy and the emergence of another's national stature. The tension had been mounting all evening, but it boiled over when the host turned to discuss recent legislation was supposed to assist working family. Crockett had only just concluded describing the legalities of the bill when De Niro cut him off, his legendary temper flaring. "Listen here," De Niro spoke, his voice rising as he turned in his chair to confront Crockett face to face. "The four, plus ship procedure, the on possess. I've been an advocate for working people since before you were born. I was raised in Little Italy. I know what hard struggle is. You politicians talk, but we people like me actually do something about it. His was a condescending tone, the kind of voice you'd speak in to a child who couldn't comprehend grown-up talk. The studio audience squirmed uncomfortably as De Niro went on the offensive. You sit in your high-rise office in Washington, giving speeches about issues you've never ever had to deal with. I built companies. I made jobs. I practiced what I preached. What have you done other than make pretty speeches? Crockett didn't flinch, her hands cradled on the table, but her gaze never wavered from De Niro's face. She had encountered this type of threats before. Rich men who believed their success entitled them to silence anyone they did not agree with. De Niro, she started, her voice firm and professional. I admire your enthusiasm, but I believe there could be some facts unknown to you about this law. Facts? De Niro laughed, the sound snarling and sarcastic. I don't need a history lesson on facts from a woman who's been in Congress for what, 5 minutes? I've been out there in the real world making real things, and you've been playing politics. The host attempted to jump in, feeling the conversation spinning out of control, but De Niro wasn't done. He leaned in, his legendary intensity now solely on Crockett like a predator eyeing its prey. You want to discuss assisting working families? I have hundreds of employees. My restaurants feed thousands a day. My films have amused millions and provided employment to innumerable actors, directors, and crew. That's actual influence, not whatever it is you attempt to exert on the world in your committee meeting. His condescension was palpable. This was the same Robert De Niro who'd glared down Joe Pesci in Goodfellas, who'd earned respect through sheer personality for years. He was pulling out all the stops to get this young Congresswoman to back down. And another thing, he went on, his finger now directly at her. You politicians love to spend somebody else's money on programs that are wasteful. You promote dependency rather than opportunity. You promise all and deliver little. At least when I lose, it's my own money I'm losing, not the taxpayers. The crowd stood stock still now, sensing the gravity of De Niro's mythic reputation weighing down on Crockett. This was the point at which most folks would bow out, apologize, or attempt to shift the topic. De Niro had employed this very tactic to cut down on scores of arguments before they had even gotten started. But Jasmine Crockett was not most folks. She breathed slowly, folded her arms across the table to remove her glasses with slow deliberateness, and placed them there. Her eyes, when she gazed up, seemed to have a sharpness that even Darrow hesitated for a moment before. Mr. De Niro, she said, voice still calm, but with an edge now that hadn't been present earlier. I believe it's time we had a genuine discussion about facts, impact, and who genuinely understands the struggles of working Americans. The studio went absolutely silent. Even De Niro, for the first time in the discussion, appeared to feel that something had changed. The young Congresswoman before him was no longer the courteous politician who had been listening silently. Something dangerous was going to occur. You spoke of your restaurants and your success, Crockett went on, her voice increasing in power with every sentence. You spoke of the real world and real impact. Well, I'll tell you about my real world, Mr. De Niro. I'll tell you about the facts you appear to believe I'm not aware of. De Niro's self-assured smirk was starting to falter as he saw his tactics of intimidation were not paying off. If anything, he had only roused something in his rival that he could not deal with. The host glanced between them apprehensively, recognizing that they were set to watch something historic on television. Throughout America, viewers were dropping their phones and leaning forward, understanding that this was not going to be another run-of-the-mill political debate. Jasmine Crockett was about to school Robert De Niro a lesson he would never forget. What followed is history, one of the most destructive takedowns on television. Crockett leaned forward in her chair, her voice growing stronger and more commanding with each sentence. Mr. De Niro, you want to discuss the real world? Well, let me give you some real-world facts. She shifted ever so slightly in the direction of the camera. But this was no longer directed solely at De Niro, it was aimed at the millions of Americans watching. Prior to my election to Congress, I was a public defender. Do you understand that, Mr. De Niro? It means I defended individuals who could not pay for high-priced lawyers. I stood in courtrooms defending working mothers arrested for unpaid traffic citations they could not afford. I advocated for fathers who were going to jail because they lost their jobs and were unable to pay child support. De Niro's assertive smile faltered as Crockett went on, her voice gathering speed like a prosecutor, laying out the evidence. You speak of hiring at your restaurants. That is great. But listen to me describe the jobs I've seen. I've defended restaurant employees, individuals who work for establishments just like yours, who couldn't miss a single shift because they were paid paycheck to paycheck. Individuals who were not able to pay for health care, could not pay for child care, could not pay to take a sick day. She sat forward, her passion now at par with De Niro's, but with precision rather than with a sledgehammer. You said you have hundreds of employees. Do you know how much those employees are paid, Mr. De Niro? Do you know how many of your employees receive food stamps? Do you know how many of them are taking second jobs just to pay rent? Because I do. I've defended them in court when landlords attempted to evict them. I've assisted them in working through the system when they couldn't pay for medicine for their kids. The studio was completely quiet. Even the cameras appeared to be breathless as Crockett systematically dismantled each of De Niro's points. You said I've been playing politics, and you've been living in the real world. Let me tell you about my real world, sir. I'm from St. Louis, grew up in a working-class household. My mother was a teacher. My father worked construction. I financed Harvard Law School through student loans that I didn't complete paying until 3 years ago. I can tell you firsthand what it's like to be worried about money, to have to make difficult decisions, to wonder whether you'll ever get there. De Niro attempted to cut in, but Crockett flashed her hand up with such presence that even the Hollywood icon was silent. But this is where we differ, Mr. De Niro. When I became successful, when I had the ability to make a difference, I didn't write checks to charity and walk away. I ran for office. I positioned myself where I could actually change the laws that continue to keep working people locked in poverty. She drew out a folder that lay beside her on the table. Evidently, she had arrived armed for just this type of argument. You want to discuss the bill we were discussing, the bill that you apparently don't think I know anything about. Let me explain it to you in some actual facts. Opening the folder, she read with the attention of the Harvard-trained attorney she was. This bill offers tax credits to families earning under $50,000 a year. That's probably less than what you spend on wine in a month, Mr. De Niro. It pays for child care so working parents don't have to decide between keeping their jobs and caring for their children. It opens access to health care, so individuals don't die for lack of insulin. Her voice increased with each statement, and De Niro was visibly shrinking in his chair. You stated that politicians make people dependent rather than creating opportunity. This bill literally creates opportunity. This bill gives job training, education grants and loans to small businesses. It enables people to make the type of success you had the good fortune to attain in Hollywood. And then came the moment that would be repeated millions of times on social media. Crockett fixed her gaze on De Niro, her tone decreasing to a soft but annihilating whisper. Mr. De Niro, you've had a remarkable career. You've made millions of people laugh and have a thriving business empire, but success does not entitle you to belittle the intellect, experience, or work ethic of others, and it definitely does not qualify you as an authority on public policy. She let that hang in the air for a moment before striking the final blow. I've dedicated my career to advocating for individuals who don't share your privilege, your money, or your megaphone. I've learned law at one of the finest institutions in the nation. I've applied it in the trenches where it gets toughest, and I've been chosen by the people of Texas to speak for them in Congress. Ismaid, what tu are tu pretri, ismaid thi. So when you tell me I don't understand the real world, when you try to intimidate me with your celebrity status, when you dismiss my expertise because of my age or my profession, you're not just insulting me, Mr. De Niro. You're insulting every working person I represent and every voter who sent me to Washington to fight for them. The silence in the studio was deafening. De Niro, perhaps for the first time in his life as an adult, was utterly speechless, his mouth opening and closing, yet no words would exit. The man who had intimidated people into respect for decades had just been intellectually and morally dismantled by a congresswoman who would not be intimidated. The host finally regained his voice. Mr. De Niro, would you care to respond? De Niro glanced about the studio as if he were attempting to determine what had been done to him. His voice was sans all of its previous confidence when he did finally speak. "I just believe that experience is important, and experience definitely is important," Crockett cut in suavely. "That's why I'm thankful to have the experience of actually working with the communities these policies impact and not just acting out characters in films about them." It was over. Robert De Niro, the legend, had been utterly outclassed, outmatched, and outmaneuvered by Jasmine Crockett. What was intended to be an intimidation had turned into a masterclass on how to stand up to bullies, no matter how famous or renowned. Its aftermath was unprecedented in the history of political media. The moment one day's deal show was over, and another began, social media went into a frenzy unprecedented in its intensity even before it. Within minutes, "Your Crockett dismantles De Niro" was trending on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The video of Crockett coolly disassembling De Niro's lines while speechless in front of him had been reshared hundreds of thousands of times in the course of just 1 hour. Twitter erupted in feedback from all over the political divide. Even those who didn't agree with the politics of Crockett had to admit that she had conducted herself amazingly. A tweeted comment that went viral from a political commentator stated, "I don't necessarily agree with policy-wise with Jasmine Crockett, but to watch her intellectually dismantle Robert De Niro's smug attitude was just gorgeous." This is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. A side-by-side image post was another trend that popped up. De Niro prior to the interview. A confident Hollywood legend. De Niro after encountering Jasmine Crockett, baffled old man who just got his butt kicked by a Harvard attorney. The memes rolled in quickly and in abundance. One was of De Niro's stunned face with the title, "When you try to intimidate someone but they actually know what they're talking about." Another was of Crockett with her glasses removed, titled, "The moment you realize you brought a movie star to a lawyer fight." But the repercussions extended far beyond social media humor. Political observers quickly saw that something important had changed in the country's discourse. CNN's political analyst referred to it as a moment of reckoning that demonstrated the way in which the new generation of politicians cannot be intimidated by celebrity or traditional power. Even a Fox News commentator, being from the other political side, admitted, "You have to admire the way Crockett handled herself. She didn't get emotional. She didn't get defensive. She just systematically destroyed every one of his arguments with facts and experience. That's how you win debates." Robert De Niro's staff entered instant damage control mode. Within hours of airing, his publicist issued a statement. "Mr. De Niro has great admiration for all public servants and was merely enthusiastic about the issues important to working Americans." But the damage was done. When De Niro attempted to spin his words about social media, the comments were vicious. His explanatory tweet was replied to by thousands of responses, many of them copies of "Perhaps next time do not try to bully someone who is smarter than you and just stick with acting." Carb late-night comedians had a good time. Saturday Night Live did a whole sketch reenacting the confrontation with the actor portraying De Niro, shrinking smaller and smaller in his chair, as the actress portraying Crockett read fact after fact. For Jasmine Crockett, the confrontation served as a springboard to national renown. Interview requests came flooding in from big networks. Political groups that had never known her name before were now inviting her to be headlining fundraisers. More significantly, her congressional peers paid attention. The video of her firmly but calmly resisting one of Hollywood's biggest bullies demonstrated that she was able to deal under pressure and think in the moment. Just the skills required to lead in Washington. But possibly most importantly, it sent a message to young people, particularly women and minorities in America. Social media was awash with tweets from watchers commenting on, among other things, "Watching Jasmine Crockett not let Robert De Niro intimidate her reminded me that I don't need to take working in belittling mode from someone just because they have status and experience. This is what self-prep, confidence, and understanding your worth look like." Crockett did not have to raise her voice or yell. She simply knew her business and wasn't hesitant to demonstrate it. Political strategists quickly saw that the standoff had established a new model for reacting to celebrity political pundits. Rather than being starstruck or intimidated, Crockett had demonstrated that celebrities must be held to the same standard as anyone else, when they jump into political debate. The situation also accentuated the generational divide in American politics. The tried-and-true model of victory through intimidation, fame, and bluster was being supplanted by a more thoughtful approach that prized preparation, expertise, and serious argument. As news organizations wrestled with the showdown in the days to follow, one thing was certain. This was not merely a moment of excellent television, it was an indication of America's future politics. Jasmine Crockett had demonstrated that the next generation of leaders would not be bullied by anyone, whether famous or not. She had indicated that brains, homework, and self-assurance could defeat bullies every time. The question now was no longer if Crockett would continue to ascend in national politics, it was where she would go, and who would be courageous enough to confront her next. And Robert De Niro learned the hard way that attempting to intimidate a person with celebrity is not a good idea, particularly when your adversary is intelligent, well-prepared, and completely fearless. What did you make of this amazing showdown? Have you ever been forced to defend yourself against someone attempting to intimidate you? Let us know in the comments. We enjoy reading your stories and views. And if you like seeing Jasmine Crockett demonstrate to the world how you should deal with a bully like a boss, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We'll have more amazing moments like this where heroes like you show that preparation and bravery will overcome fame and intimidation every time. Don't forget to like this video if you think that respect is earned based on actions and brain, not celebrity status and loudmouths. Share it with anyone who to witness what true strength actually looks like in practice. What other political showdowns should we tackle? We'll let you know in the comments, and we'll be sure to deliver to you the most amazing tales of bravery, cleverness, and fairness from American politics. 6.